Abram, hi.
Okay. And let me do a mute before Anita reminds me. Anita, you're the Zoom gabbai. Okay. We have a comment. Are you eating dairy tonight? I don't know if that was a serious question or not, but if you listen to my class, the custom is to eat dairy by day. So I will be eating dairy tomorrow after davening. That's when we eat dairy. On Yom Tiv, you're really supposed to eat a meat meal unless you have an issue with meat or whatever it is. You're supposed to eat a meat meal. I want to welcome Reb Avram. Wait, in Jerusalem, Avram? Wow. You're teasing us. Fantastic. All right. So everyone, wow, this is a major, major Yom Tiv, and it's really unfortunate that we're not going to be together. It's so exciting every year when we're together, especially tonight when we come back at midnight. Newtown has been sleeping for at least 3 hours, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of Jews come to the synagogue at midnight, and we study and we argue and we debate. But the key is, the opportunity here is that when we don't have a built-in system to rely on, then we have to demonstrate to ourselves our commitment to what we're doing on our own. And that's the opportunity in the unfortunate reality of us not being together for Shavuos. So I want to start with a l'chaim to everyone, that we should all experience the spirit of the holiday of Shavuos, which is a matter of us bringing it into our homes through prayer, through study, through thought. And we should become more aware of the fact. To me, this is a fact. I've become aware. It's taken me a number of years and experience in life to realize this, that the gift of the Torah that God has given us is such an enormous gift and transforms our lives. And the more we connect to it and the more we embrace it, the more we are enhancing our own lives, never mind anything else. And hopefully, what I'll share with you now also will only enhance that. So l'chaim, everyone, l'chaim. So everyone knows that in modern times, in modern experience, and something that I repeat quite often because I believe in it very strongly, we know that force does not work. You cannot force people into doing things. It simply doesn't work. You cannot control someone else's life. Impossible. It's just impossible. And therefore, we live in very democratic times where we know that everyone gets to choose their own path. What we want to do, I was just speaking actually to Rosie about a situation which is a devastating situation based on choices that people are making, even though they've been advised otherwise a number of times. But they're making these decisions and they're ruining their life. It's like clear. They're just clearly torching, burning down their life and bringing more and more misery into their life. And it's sad to see. But if you don't have, but you can't make a choice for another person. You can only do your best to influence them. That is the reality. And in our day and age, more than ever before, force does not work. There were times that force would work in the sense that you would be able to control someone externally simply because of fear. But today, in a democratic society and environment, that doesn't work anymore. Which in many ways, that is a blessing, although it also comes with its own challenges. And as we know, its own opportunities, because there's some tremendous opportunities when you have to, on your own, step up and make the right choices. And guess what? Hashem demonstrated this when he gave us the Torah. When Hashem gave us the Torah, we all know that Hashem went to the different nations and he asked them if they want the Torah. He didn't impose it on anybody. He said, do you want it? They said, what does it say in it? And the Medrash tells us, what the Ishmaelites issue with the Torah was, what the children of Esav's issue with the Torah was, what Moab and Ammon and Moab's issue with the Torah was. And then Hashem came to the Jewish people and said, you want the Torah. He didn't impose anything. So what did we say? Nasav and Ishma. We took it. We made a very good choice. An unbelievable choice. It's such an unbelievable choice that we can live a whole life and study Torah our whole life and we still won't be able to fully appreciate the blessing of the Torah. But then the Torah tells us a little detail in the story that makes anyone who reads the Torah very curious. God sends him. God asked the Jews, "Do you want the Torah?" They said yes. God says, "I want you to be my chosen people." We say yes. God says, "Great, I'm going to give you the Torah. I need you to prepare." We said, "We're going to prepare." No one should come near the mountain. No one's coming near the mountain. We're all good. Everything's working exactly as planned. And then the Torah says that they stood right before God gave the Torah. The Torah says they stood bitachtis hahar, or for those who are from Israel, bitachtit hahar, which means, well, we're not sure what it means actually. So normally, literally, it means under the mountain. That the Jewish people stood under the mountain, which is not possible. You can't stand under a mountain. So what would it mean in context? It would mean they stood at the bottom of the mountain. However, they didn't stand at the bottom of the mountain because God said you're not allowed to come near the mountain. They all stood far away from the mountain. So what does the Torah mean when it says that they stood betachtit hahar? So there's a well-known Talmud which tells us that from here we learn that right before God said the Ten Commandments, he pulled a fast one on us. And he took the entire mountain, the whole Mount Sinai, he picked it up, he put it on top of the Jewish people and said, are you going to accept the Torah? And if not, this will be the end of you. What do you think the Jews said? But the more curious thing is, okay, why did God have to do that? But why did God have to do that? You do that normally when you want to force someone to give you the answer you want. But the Jews already gave God the answer. They already said, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will listen. So God has to use tactics to try and convince the Jews to do things. Why was it so important that after the Jews democratically, on their own volition, made a choice, and they said we're going to accept the Torah, that God has to impose fear in them by putting the mountain over the head? The key to, there are many explanations to this, but I want to share a meaningful explanation. There are a lot of technical explanations to it. I want to share a meaningful explanation about this. And the meaningful explanation is this, something that the Rebbe once shared. The understanding why God did this is the secret to success in life. It's actually the secret to success in life. I don't know about you, but I've spent a lot of time, I probably still spend some time, trying to figure out what works. A number of things I think I've come to realize, and just took a lot of time for me to realize, unfortunately. But what is it that makes things work? And one of the things, and this is something I would think that any thinking person who has even the slightest ounce of ambition in them thinks about, because you don't want to, you want to make sure that your time and your efforts are productive. So what makes a person successful? And here's the key. It's a balance between two things. And as we know, life is a balance. It's always a balancing act. It's a balance between having the desire to do something, so you love what you're doing. You have this deep desire to do something, right? You love a certain thing. God designed you in a certain way that you just love doing a certain type of a thing, and you put your heart and soul into it. That's one side. And the other side is the discipline to persevere and do what you love doing. Because as we know, we love doing things, but once it starts getting difficult, it's hard to continue doing it. And then we begin to realize we drop out, and then we start again and we drop out. And then we begin to think, well, theoretically I love it, but practically I hate it. Because what we need to know is what we love, which is really exciting. And then there is the discipline to day in and day out do what we love to do, even though it gets boring and there are obstacles and it becomes difficult, etc. That balance is a very tricky balance. And most people get lost in that balance. Either we're very disciplined, but we don't have a passion, we don't know what we're passionate about, or what's even more common is we know what we like, but we only like it when it's exciting. We only like it when we're winning. We only like it when we're making money. We only like it when it's easy. But we don't have the discipline to stick with it and to persevere. There's a fascinating story that we have in the Nevi'im, in the prophets, with King David. And I want to give a little background, and I'm mentioning this story because King David, his birthday and Yartzeit is on Shavuos. And as I shared last night, some inspiration from his life, he's one of the most inspiring individuals that ever lived. And so King David was the son-in-law. This is what I didn't share last night. I shared the earlier part of his life. Later on, he became the son-in-law of the first king of the Jewish people, King Saul. King Saul realized that David, his son-in-law, King David, was going to succeed him. And so he spent, I forgot the exact amount of time, it was a year and a half or so, literally a year and a half, the king with his army chasing his son-in-law to kill him. That's what was going on. So King David is on the run for a year and a half from the nation's army, the army of the country. Everything was against him. He had a little group that was with him and believed in him, and then his father-in-law ended up being killed in the war, and he ends up becoming king, which was the whole process. Then he has a son who tried to oust him and did successfully oust him. Avshalom, his son Avshalom, ousted him as king temporarily. When King David ran out of his palace, which was a major tragedy, it was a very big embarrassment. King David went running out of his palace to save his own life with a few close aides who stayed with him. And when he was running out of the palace and he was running down the valley, across the valley, there was a very prominent Jew standing there. His name was Shimi ben Gera. Shimi ben Gera was the head of the Sanhedrin. That's basically the chief of justice of the Jewish people. A very, very significant individual. The Av Bezdin, the head of the Sanhedrin. And when King David was running, Shimi, who for whatever reason had a dislike for King David at that time, he cursed him and he told him, what you did to your father-in-law by throwing him out of his seat, which is not what King David did, by the way. God told the prophet to anoint King David, but he said that what you did to your father-in-law by filling his seat and throwing him out, your son's doing too. It's all coming back to you. And he cursed King David at that time as well. It was a very, very nasty, nasty thing to say. And also it's an unacceptable thing to say to a king. And we know, although we don't have this experience in our day and age, when someone disrespects a king, never mind curses a king, if someone disrespects a king or doesn't listen to the order of a king, then they are a rebel, and a rebel can be and very often should be killed by the king. For a rebellion, it's called Merid b'malchus. If someone's Merid b'malchus, they rebel against the king, they get capital punishment. So King David didn't say anything. And this itself is beautiful. And the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya what we learned from it about anger. He didn't respond. He just continued on his way. Eventually, his son got killed, and King David comes back to the palace. King David is very old. He's about to die. His son Shlomo, Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, is anointed in succeeding him. And his father tells him a few things before he passes away. And I just want to mention my good Nevi'im Chavrusa, my study partner Stan, knows this whole story because we studied this together. So
amazing story.
Yeah, amazing story. Amazing story. So King David, so when King David is about to die, he tells his son a few things that he requests on his deathbed that his son do. One of the things was he said, I want you to find that Shimi ben Gera needs to be killed. It wasn't appropriate for me to do it because of the circumstances. It would not have come out proper. It would not have looked right. But you kill him. However, don't kill him because he cursed me. Find a smart way. You're a smart man, because King Solomon was the wisest of all men. He said, you're a smart man. Find a smart way to kill him. That's what King David. So King David dies. One of the first things that his son does, he listens to his father. He calls Shimi ben Gera. He says, Shimi, buy a house in Jerusalem. Live in Jerusalem, and I give you an edict in order from the king that you are never allowed to leave Jerusalem. Never allowed to leave Jerusalem. That's what he tells him. Okay, what happens? I think it was a couple of years had gone by, and then Shimi, maybe he thought that the king was relaxed or something, whatever, and Shimi left Jerusalem to meet a dignitary, a king from a different nation. He comes back. He immediately gets called in by the king. He said, who gave you permission to leave the city? You're under an order, an edict from the king not to leave the city. You violated that order, and King Solomon killed him. That's the story. Now the question is, King Solomon, what was his wise way of catching Shimi ben Gera and killing him? He told him, move to Jerusalem and never leave the city. Well, what happens if you never would have left? Was that such a wise thing? I mean, how did King Solomon know that Shimi would not leave? That Shimi was definitely going to leave? Because he needed to set him up. He was setting him up so that he can kill him. That was a lousy setup, it would seem. Maybe he just wouldn't leave. The reason why King Solomon set him up this way, in a very unassuming way, so much so that we even have this question, is because King Solomon knew this reality. And the reality is that if a person is told that you cannot do something, and they are given a confined limit, the amount of discipline a person needs to have to control themselves from forbidden fruit is very, very strong. And very few people on their own have that discipline. In fact, he knew Shimi didn't have enough discipline. He cursed the king, which was itself not a very wise thing to do. And so therefore, we need help from outside of ourselves. That there is a force outside of us that instructs us in a disciplinary way and supports us in doing the things that we agreed to do, but it's so hard to do because even though we want to commit ourselves, to have the discipline, to find that discipline is a very hard thing. So Hashem comes and he's like, God of the world, the King of all kings comes, and he says, you all agreed, I know, but you're going to have a rough day. You know, in a few weeks, you're going to have a rough day. You're going to say, where's Moshe? And you're going to have a rough time keeping to, you shall not make other idols. He said, I'm going to put this over your head, and I'm going to warn you. Don't you dare. In order to help us exercise the discipline that we need, which is very often very hard for we ourselves to exercise. And here's something that's unbelievably fascinating. To date, I believe, and Reb Avram knows about this a lot more than I do, but to date, I believe the most successful system that has been discovered to help people overcome addictions is when they join a group and they have a sponsor. And the idea of a sponsor is that you have someone outside of yourself who's helping you control yourself. The person doesn't want to touch that alcohol because they know it's ruining their life. They know that, but then suddenly an urge comes up and they lose their discipline. So then the system says you just need the discipline to make a phone call. You make a phone call and another person outside of your own self assists you in reawakening your own discipline so that you can persevere and you can do what you really want to do. There's a story actually with a woman, and this relates to related to Shavuos, a woman who was 400 pounds. She was dangerously obese to the point of her possibly being in a situation where her life was at risk. That's how obese she was. It was a very dangerous situation. And she came to a dietitian, a Jewish woman and a religious woman. She came to a dietitian and she said, "Can you help me?" And the dietitian said, I don't think there's any way I can help you. I really don't think so. She said, please, this is my life. I'm trying to save my life. You have to help me. So the dietitian said, look, I'm willing to work with you on one condition, that you follow exactly the diet plan that I give you. And if ever you have an urge to eat something that's off of this diet plan, you don't eat it until you call me. The same system, same AA, it's all different anonymous groups. She lost 175 pounds. She went from 400 pounds to 225 pounds, which is amazing. I mean, that's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, that year, the year of this event, of this incident, she was part of a shul. And it was pre-corona times. And their shul was having like we have. They were having a dairy breakfast, dairy kiddush after davening on the first day of Shavuos. And we're very religious, so we do it both days. Not everyone's as religious as us, so they only do it the first day in many shuls. So they were having it, and it was her turn as a member of the shul to arrange the whole luncheon, the dairy luncheon. So she arranges, makes all the orders and everything, and it's fine. She didn't have an urge for months. She's really been doing very well. And she's in her car, and in the back seat, she's got piled up dairy desserts and cheesecakes and ice cream and all of these unbelievable things that she used to crave like crazy. And she's driving, and suddenly a craving hits her like a ton of bricks. And she's got just one bagel. I mean, just one donut, just one piece of cake, right? Because we know how that works, right? The one piece of cake. The one piece of cake turns into 3 cakes. So immediately she called up the woman and she says, I don't know if I'm going to be able to control myself. I am sitting in a car full of stuff, which I'm not allowed to eat. And I have such a craving, I'm going out of my mind. I need to just take one cake. The woman said, do not touch anything in the car. Stop right now at the closest grocery store and buy a bunch of vegetables to eat. Eat the vegetables and then get back into the car. But her cravings were so strong until suddenly she had a brilliant idea. She drove like crazy at a crazy speed to a supermarket. She jumped out of the car. She ran in. She didn't buy the vegetables. She bought some sliced turkey. And she took one slice of turkey and she ate it. And she solved her problem. You understand? Because the moment she ate the turkey, she couldn't eat the cheesecake. She was fleischiks. She just ate meat. She has to wait 6 hours. Isn't that amazing? That's how fascinating we are as human beings, because God told her that when you eat meat, you're not allowed to eat dairy for 6 hours. So she ate meat, and like that, her issue went away. Her desire went away. Because God assisted her in her discipline, and so therefore she was able to continue doing what she believed so deeply in doing, which is to make herself healthy. That's a demonstration of why God took the mountain and put it over our heads. To say, I want to help you do what you want to do. So as we celebrate Shavuos, we realize that Hashem loves us so unbelievably that Hashem doesn't only love us in an obvious way, with revealed love, but Hashem loves us with tough love. That's how much, that's real, that is the real commitment to somebody. Like I told Beryl at the beginning, don't tell me what I want to hear, tell me what I need to hear. It's not easy to get a friend who will tell you what you need to hear. Very often it's because we don't really want to hear it. But that a real friend tells us what we need to hear, and hopefully they know how to position it in a way that we can actually hear it too. Hashem gave us the Torah to study it, but Hashem gave us the Torah not only to study it, He gave us the Torah to embrace it. Embracing it means that when we study, we ask ourselves, what is this saying to me? And what am I meant to do with this? So that when we study the Torah, we can begin to realize it's not just ideas that are interesting academically, but these ideas are transformative. These ideas, I'm going to go back to the situation that was just told to me literally at 6:20, a situation where two people, one person in particular is destroying his life. Despite very clear guidance that he was given not to do exactly what he's doing, but despite himself. It's like one of those things, despite himself. I would, as we experience more and more in life, we begin to realize things more and more. But there was a point where I would look at people who were just living what we would call a free life, without obligations, without children, without the commitment to a marriage. They're just enjoying themselves. And you look at them and you say, and you wonder and you say, it's very nice. I've devoted myself to all of these different things, but look, this guy's living it up, and I have all of these responsibilities on my head. That's the fact of the matter. But when we experience enough of life, we begin to realize, and I think all of us have, because most of you experience far more than I've experienced, that actually what looks like a free life is not a free life. And what looks like a free life is a very misguided life, and actually comes with a lot of misery and a lot of hurt and a lot of pain inside. And it's just some external satisfaction or pleasure that's covering up on a lot of other things that are going on. And unless we actually step deeply into life, which we do through embracing the Torah and all, not just studying the Torah, but embracing the Torah, we begin to see the beauty, the richness, and the gift that Hashem has given us. I'll share one final story. There was a chassid, a Chabad. You see, when in the 19, I think it was during the late 1940s, right at the end, after World War II. There were a lot of Chabad Hasidim in Russia, and they couldn't get out of Russia. So there was a very big effort and mission. That's the way Rosie's grandparents got out. That's the way Rabbi Shem Tov's father got out. I'm not sure. I think his father. I don't know about his mother. They had to sneak out of Russia, and that was a very big effort. And many people were caught in the process and put into prison. And then they tried again. That was their only solution to salvation. So there one chassid who eventually did get out, but he was caught in his first effort to escape, to cross over the border into Poland. His name was Rebberal Gurevich. He was a principal in France in the Chabad school in France for many years. And when he was caught, he was a young guy. I'm not sure how old he was then, but he was a young guy, and he was put into a prison. He was lucky. He wasn't sent to Siberia. He was sent to a local work camp, and the work camp wasn't a very heavy labor camp. They sewed wallets, which the government would sell on the market and make money. So sewing wallets is not nearly what many other prisoners in Russia had to do. So he was there sewing wallets. He was thanking Hashem every minute that this was his lot. However, he began to think to himself, what's he going to do when Shabbos comes? Because sewing is one of the 39 forms of labor. You're not allowed to sew. So almost as if the guard was reading his thoughts, because the guard saw a Hasidic Jew. So the guard comes over to him right before Shabbos and says, listen, don't tell me you're not working on Shabbos. You don't work on Shabbos, we'll send you off to Siberia. You better work on Shabbos. Now, there was another benefit to that camp that he was in that there was actually a pair of tefillin there that he was able to use every day, which is also very unusual. So it was like he was in a luxury camp, relatively speaking. And he was able to put on tefillin. So he starts thinking to himself, well, if I get sent to Siberia, the likelihood is very, very, very strong that I will not have a pair of tefillin to put on every day. And there's a good chance they're going to force me to work in Siberia on Shabbos. So is it wrong for me to work here on Shabbos? He thought that himself, but he was a chassid. And the chassidim, the chassidim, especially then in the environment they were in, chassidim were taught were instilled with certain ideas in their head, which just don't let them give in to themselves. So he said, no. Shabbos is Shabbos. And he just shut down his mind, which he saw as his evil inclination. And he said, Shabbos is Shabbos, a Jew keeps Shabbos. Hashem can save me however he wants. He has many ways to save me. I don't need to figure this out for Hashem. I just need to do what Hashem wants me to do, and Hashem will do what Hashem has to do. So he decided he's not working on Shabbos. Shabbos comes, he's not working. The guard comes over to him and starts yelling at him. What are you doing? Why aren't you working? He says, Shabbos, I can't work. He says, I told you we'll send you Sabir, start working now. And he wouldn't start. So they called him into the office. In the office were the three commanders of the camp. It's very intimidating. And they look at him and they start yelling and screaming at him, how dare you not work on Shabbos, and we're going to punish you terribly. And he held his ground and said, look, very calmly, I don't work on, I'm a Hasidic Jew and I'm not working on Shabbos. Whatever you have to do, but I am not working on Shabbos. So they looked at it. So then the three of them got together quietly. They had a little conversation and they come back to him and say, you know what? We have another job for you. We'll give you the job of being the guard of the warehouse where all of the leather is. Is that something you can do on Shabbos? He says, sure, that would be amazing. He sits outside a room and he doesn't have to do anything. It's a dream. They said, that's your job. They said, and we'll tell you why we're giving you the job. Because we know that the guard who sits there now steals a lot of leather when he's there. He sneaks out a lot of leather. We know he's stealing a lot of leather. We see that you're a man of such principle that you won't work on Shabbos no matter what we do to you. We know you're not going to steal any leather. We trust you, and we're making you the guard of that room. Here's a man who exercised unbelievable discipline, and that served him more than anything else. And why did he exercise that discipline? Because he dedicated himself to what Hashem put him here for. One of the 10 commandments. It's one of the 10 commandments, Shabbos. And when we dedicate ourselves, when we have that commitment, what happens is Hashem says, you are using the discipline that I am supporting you with to make sure to do what you're supposed to, and I will make sure to take care of you and give you the blessings that you need. So in the next 48 hours, it's a very powerful time, and I always like to try and somehow convey the energy of the holiday, as the Frierdiker Rebbe did, in saying that Satan is wiped off the map for the next 48 hours. And we have the ability to come closer to Hashem through the Torah, which Hashem gave to us for that reason. We should all ask ourselves, how can I have a more intimate relationship with the Torah? What can I do? How can I study more? How can I be more connected to what the Torah is teaching me? Even if it's one thing that we find, that we say this one thing, or this 15 minutes a day, or this 1 hour class, whatever it may be that we commit ourselves to. Because we are going to exercise that discipline which serves us more than it serves anyone else. So l'chaim to our very holy and special community and friends, that we should all have an inspired Shavuos despite the challenges we're facing by being alone. And we should bring that inspiration back into the community in a literal sense, as we will, God willing, hopefully in the next few weeks, be able to start getting back together slowly. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Amen.
Thank you. Let me unmute. All right. The floor is yours, everyone.
Chag Sameach, Rabbi.
Chag Sameach. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Rabbi, Jason.
Good Shabbos.
Jason.
I'm from Florida, Rabbi.
Oh, Rabbi Binyamin, I didn't even realize you're with us. Welcome, welcome.
Who would miss being with you? What are you?
Ah, there you go. There you go. I can't argue with
Beautiful, beautiful. Your words were beautiful. Thank you so much.
that. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a wonderful Yom Tov in Florida.
Thank you.
Everybody, be well.